Hey Book Besties, welcome back to my channel and thank you for being here. In today's video, I'll be setting up my spreads for the 2 readathons that I participated in September and the 8 books that I read this month. For this video, I'll need both of my reading journals. My yellow journal is from the beginning of the year and the navy journal is my current. But the Magical Readathon takes place all year, so I'll be using both journals to update. My cover spreads this month are sort of themed around some new stickers that I got from Marigona Suli Art and just some paper that I liked, but I thought that the colors kind of gave an early autumnal feel to them, and I really like how the cover spreads turned out. This month I participated in a readathon called Survive the Night, which was a week-long readathon that was summer camp themed. So basically we had to hide from a serial killer by reading books for different locations around a camp, and it was a lot of fun. It was quick and a good tandem readathon to the Magical Readathon that I was already doing. The readathon graphic that I'm using doesn't match the theme, but that's why I'm putting it on the back side of this little flap. And on the other side, I'm going to make a TBR space. For most of this readathon, I hung out in the boathouse reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I was safe. I kept dodging the killer. After I finished that book, I jumped over to the archery field where I read After You by Jojo Moyes, and was able to come out of camp unscathed. The killer did not reach me, so I consider that a win. And the Discord chat that was popping off all month was so much fun. So I just want to give a shout out to Reading with Jess, who hosted this readathon, and if she hosts again, you guys have to check it out. I'm using this gridded scrapbook paper to create my calendar for the month. September was super easy to draw out as the first day of the month landed on a Sunday. I love how the dark lines mix with the faint brown lines of the paper, and I think it turned out really cute. Also, I apologize for my shaking camera. I'm sitting at a desk that clearly does not like to stand still, but I didn't realize this until I was editing the video. September for me is always so busy. My husband and his family, they all have September birthdays. My best friend's birthdays are in September, and I have a lot of cousins with September birthdays. So it always feels like a month of celebrations and no extra time for hobbies. But somehow I managed to read a lot of books that I really enjoyed. So that's a win. I am absolutely obsessed with this sticker sheet that I got from Marigona Suli Art. And I think it's ironic because all these girls are carrying various bread baguettes and things, which is funny because I'm gluten intolerant and can't enjoy yummy bread anymore. But I just loved these characters and I knew I needed some of her art in my journal. It's just so cozy and autumnal. And I love how there are little filigrees included as well to balance out the rest of my journal page. I also found these matching color flowers from an Etsy shop, and I thought they paired well together with this little character. I'm not in love with my September font, so I added the shadow to make it better, but I don't know. That's probably the weakest part of this whole spread. But over here, I'm adding in a title top for my TBR list. These are the books that prior to September I had planned to read for the Magical Readathon. If you're new to my channel, I am obsessed with readathons and have been putting out a monthly compilation of the different readathon options that I've been finding online. And in September, that was the only video that I was able to post, but I did finish my August reading wrap up, and that came out 2 weeks ago. And with this video, I am back on track, and that feels good. I use the gray box as a place to write in just notes about my video and progress I'm making as a creator. And in the corner here, I'm using an adorable dragon and book sticker, and then a stack of books as well. Then I realized the dragon sticker was not centered the way I wanted, so I very carefully had to peel it away so that I could stick it a little bit to the right. And thankfully, I only ripped the corner and was able to stick it back on no problem. And now I think it looks much nicer and better framed. Then I'm just adding a couple more stickers in the blank areas and checking off the books that I read within the month. Again, I had 8 books on my TBR and I read 5 of those books, so pretty good. The other books were swapped out for other choices. I also wrote in a quote here, but it kind of got lost on the map, so I'm adding in some different papers to bring it more to the foreground and adding a little sticker of flowers in the frame. So before we can start on our new spreads for Magical Readathon, we need to revisit the old spreads. This journal here follows my reading progress from January to May of this year. And these were the spreads that I created for the Magical Readathon for their spring equinox. This readathon is hosted by G at Book Roast, and it's an annual readathon in which you take a character along a journey reading 1 book a month, except for 2 times during the year where you go back to a magical school called Orilium and participate in their spring and autumn equinox. And this year, the autumn equinox fell in September. On this inside flap is where I document which book that I read for my character's journey. And I have this little pocket here which holds some certifications that I can also earn for my character. So I can earn things like a dragon riding license, a sandship engineer, a bog cataloger, and apothecary keeper. And I had only a few more prompts that I needed to fulfill to, get these certifications. So for the dragon riding license, all I had to do was watch a show or movie that contained a dragon. So I watched The Hobbit: Desolation of Smaug, and I'm just adding in a little thumbnail of the movie poster so I can remember how I participated and gluing that onto my certification. I participated in a Middle-earth readathon in August, and since then we've watched season 2 of Rings of Power, all of the Hobbit movies, and are now making our way through the Lord of the Rings movies. And then for Sandship Engineer, the prompt was to doodle a ship and share it online. So you guys are my online presence. Thanks for being here. And this is the ship that I doodled. I am just going to kind of attach it on the side here to make a flap so I can still see the books that I read for the prompts. And eventually I'll be transferring this into an Orilium journal that's specifically dedicated to this readathon. But hey, I'm pretty proud of it. I think it turned out well. And then all of these certifications will just go back into this little pocket. A new addition to the Magical Readathon this month was the Guild Emporium. Up until this point, you would earn points by reading different books, and you could kind of get different perks for reading, like switching out one prompt for another. Now there's something called the Guild Emporium, which is kind of like a catalog of magical things that you can spend your points on. So things like a cloak that helps you be invisible and disguised, or a portable library, so you never have to choose between how many books that you want to bring somewhere. It is so detailed and fun, and I wanted to make a little mini book to keep in my journal. So here all I'm doing is creating kind of like a bifold system by printing out mini versions of the pages of the catalog and pasting them together. Then I'm going back and folding them all so the pages can be double-sided. I think it helps to have a very crisp edge with this type of project. So really pushing down on those different edges to get a nice, clean, balanced look. Once I attached everything together and folded it, I glued the pages together and created a purple spine for this little magazine. Purple's kind of like an underlying color for the Magical Readathon. It's in a lot of the graphics, and it also represents the powerful rocks that came from a meteor in the lore of this readathon. I think it's so cute. Anything miniature to me is just, it makes it 10 times better. So I love having that in my journal now. Now I'm starting the spread for the autumn equinox. I'm taking a Tombow and just kind of outlining the edges of my page. I've already kind of marked where I want to put in my different graphic images, but I don't want there to be a little white outline around them, so I'm just kind of coloring in the background, but most of this will get covered up. I'm using some torn book pages from a Harry Potter book that I found in a little free library. The book had already molded, so I took out the papers that were safe and I gave them a new life. And I just love how torn out book pages look in a reading journal. It's totally on theme and it still acts as kind of the perfect neutral base for whatever you're pasting in. During this readathon, your character chooses a calling to follow, and the purpose of the readathon is for your character to study their trade, and the trade determines how many books you're going to read for the readathon. So my character is a thread mage, which required me to read 6 books for the month of September in order to graduate from the autumn equinox. I'm using the template by Magical Book Garden, which you can find in the Discord, to highlight which books that I read for each of the classes. And then I'm going around only on 3 sides of this image so that it creates a little pocket where I can put my syllabus inside. For the syllabus, I just printed out a mini version of it, and I'm making this little pull tab with black paper, just making it look like a ribbon. And before I glue these 2 pages together, I'm going to glue this little ribbon in, and then I can close it up so it's just one graphic that's double-sided, and I can slip it into the pocket. I ended up reading 8 books instead of just the 6, so the 2 extra books that I read that didn't fulfill any of my class requirements, I'm going to put to the side of the graphic. And I'm just putting these on some black construction papers so that they stand out in front of the background. On the opposite side of the page, I'm setting up a spread for our Guild's book club book of the month. This is something that each order has, and the book that was chosen for Order of the Crescent was Evocation by S.T. Gibson. This is not a book that I ever would have picked up on my own, and as hard as I tried to get into it, I just wasn't a fan. The book was super cheesy to me. I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like the magic system. I thought it was very uninteresting, unoriginal. So it was a flop for me, but I got through it and I got my team some extra points. Over here, I'm pasting in an image of an elf with a bow, since that's the conduit I chose, but this is just from Pinterest. And then I'm pasting in another graphic by the Magical Book Garden with our Order of the Crescent book pick. And behind that graphic, I will write in my notes about the book. I got these really cool little wax seal stickers from Daiso, and again I'm kind of tying in the purple element of the Magical Readathon here with some purple wax seals, and I chose the images like keys and moons to represent our guild as well. I love how the spread turned out. This next spread is going to be really simple. I'm just going to take some notes for 4 of the books that I read this month. These 4 books were 4-star reads for me, and by my definition, that means I thoroughly enjoyed these, and they still kind of sit in my mind as really, really good books. Something may have been missing, making it not a 5-star read, but overall, really enjoyed each of these. The first book that I read this month was The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is the last book in the Folk of the Air series, and it follows our characters Ren and Oak as they deal with the aftermath following the original trilogy. This is probably my least favorite of all the books, but it was still so, so good. I really like Ren's character. I think she's fascinating, and I love that Holly Black gave kind of her own story with Oak. I think it kind of tied up this world very well. I still feel like it could have been longer, could have been filled with a little bit more story. So I'm hoping that she gives us some novellas eventually, because I just will never be sick of this world. I want it all. I want all of Elfame universe all the time. For my inscription class, the prompt was to choose a book that contained all of the letters of my first name. So for that, I chose Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I loved this book. It was so cozy, and I always love a book that has a main character that, beats to her own drum, a little bit socially divergent, and this book delivered on that. I also loved that she was obsessed with fairy lore. It just was very cozy, fairy tale vibes, and I loved it. There was a little bit of a mystery, a little bit of romance. It was just a nice, cozy read. After that, I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. His books are hit or miss for me, but we read this for book club, and all of us really enjoyed our reading experience. We had so many theories and so much to talk about, and none of us called the ending, so it was very surprising. And then for my alchemy class, I had to read a book that would make me emotional. So I looked at my TBR shelf and found After You, which is the second book in the Me Before You series. I read that book like 10 years ago and loved it, but this sequel has been sitting on my shelf for years and years, so I knew it was something that I needed to read now, and it was just meant to be, and I loved it. And my last spread is also for more book reviews. I had 3 more books that I wanted to document in my journal, starting with Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This was the book that I chose for my qualification in alchemy class, and the prompt for this read was to read a book that was originally self-published and then later became traditionally published. Immediately, this book came to mind because I remember when TikTok was going crazy about this book. I don't even use TikTok, and yet I still was hearing everybody rave about it. So I had extremely high hopes for this world, especially knowing that it later became traditionally published. I thought it was going to be great, but it kind of fell into like a 2-3 star realm for me. It just didn't feel very polished, and the plot was severely lacking. Like, it was kind of boring for an adventure book, and I expected it to be very high stakes, World of Dragons and everything like that, and it was much heavier on the romance side of things than on the adventure side. So I don't think it was the book for me, but I'm glad I finally read it. For my class in restoration, I chose The Forgotten Book by Mictilde Glasser because it had a night sky on the cover. This story is real fun. It's about a journal that whatever you write in it comes true. And it felt a little bit YA. It wasn't my favorite book by her. I absolutely loved her book, The Book Jumper. I gave that 5 stars. So I was slightly disappointed, but overall really enjoyed it. For my Spells and Incantations class, I chose Serpent and the Wings of Night, since the prompt was to choose a book that was a 5-star prediction. I absolutely love vampire lore, so I had a feeling that I would love this book, and I was correct. This story follows a human who lives in a world of vampires and is raised by a vampire, and her nickname is the Little Serpent because she is just as feisty and has learned to survive in this crazy world. The story was action-packed, the characters were so dynamic, and the end of this book had me physically screaming. I was obsessed, and I'm so excited to continue the series. And with that, it's time for the final flip. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed making them for you. Let me know if you participated in the Magical Readathon and if you read any of the books that we talked about today. I hope to see you in another video soon. Bye!